Hello and welcome to the Free Outside Show. New hair, who dis? Apparently it's pink. I'm colorblind and pink is one of the hardest colors for me to see. But we have a great show for you today. Today we have on Jeff Pelletier. I think that's how you say it. And if not, I'm sorry. I think I'm just going to let kind of the intros to the guests speak for themselves. But funny story. So I got this new mic right here. You probably hear that. I was just tapping it if you're listening only. But all these are video and they're on YouTube and I guess the video's on Spotify too. But I got this new mic and the first interview I did with it, I had it turned around and was talking into it backwards like this. So can you hear the difference? I just turned it around. That's how I talked into it for an entire interview. I just turned it back around. So that's sort of the inside baseball of as we upgrade and get better with our equipment, we still have to learn how to use it over here at Free Outside LLC. I've become, well, maybe I have. I've become spring cleaning. I've begun spring cleaning and my hope is to get it done by spring. I am a bad cleaner and I get a lot of stuff. I test some stuff for different companies and tend to hold on to it. So I am trying to get rid of some of that stuff. All right. In this month of Jeff, cue intro.
Month of Jeff.
We are having on another Jeff because that's what we do. And I just think this month is really funny. So thanks for bearing with me. I mean, we had on so many big guests of Tara, probably the face of Ultra running shoes now with her new contract. We had on David Roach, who was on the Rich Roll podcast. We had on Dean Karnassus, who got probably so many of you into ultra running. And we had on more, I can't even remember. A bunch of really good names. We had on like world record holder Frank Heelan. Then it was just like, what can we do that's fun, that sticks to my roots of this podcast? And you know what that is? That was having a month of Jeff, where it's like, let's only have Jeffs on the podcast this month. And even though we talked to Scott Jurek, I didn't interview him because it's not the month of Scott, it's the month of Jeff. But I think he'll be on in the future. In the meantime, I'm training for a thing that I think I'll put out announce in the second to last podcast of the month. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into this. Remember, like, subscribe on YouTube. If you give us 5 stars on Apple and write a review, I can read those out loud. If you write a comment on the episode, if you're on Spotify, you can just swipe up and write something. I can read that out loud too. 5 stars on both of them really help. And sharing this on social media, we have a Free Outside podcast Instagram account. So if you follow that, that also helps. Let's get into the episode. This is the Canadian, the creator of the film Soft Rock, Jeff Pelletier. All right, welcome into the month of Jeff, where we only interview people named Jeff after quite a run in November. We're just going through the best named people now, and today's guest is Jeff Pelletier. I think I got that right.
Nailed it.
Perfect. Okay. So what I think is really interesting about you, and I want to dive into first with just a simple question, is the multifaceted travel that you do. So let's just set the groundwork with what is fast packing, or at least what is fast packing to you?
To me, fast packing is sort of where hiking or backpacking meets trail running. We jog the flats, we hike the ups, and we run the downs where we can. I also practice what I tend to call soft packing, which is like hut to hut fast packing, where it's not really backpacking. You're not really carrying much gear. So it's anywhere from sort of hut to hut running to more traditional fast packing, which really is like ultralight backpacking basically. But again, you run where you can.
Yeah. Is that more like the European style? Like it's more conducive to Europe, the hut to hut system, or?
Definitely. I mean, we just don't have the hut systems in North America like they do. And in Europe, it's, you pretty much just bring some euros or a credit card and set off and you can run to another country and then take the train back if you want, right? So there's all that infrastructure. Whereas, we don't have that as much in North America. So here it tends to be more the traditional fast packing, which is more, again, like traditional ultralight backpacking, which brings in a whole world of complexities because now you're dealing with sleep systems, shelters, and also sometimes bare safety issues as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're a really incredible filmmaker too. Is it possible to have gear to make a film and fast pack at the same time, at least in North America where you need a shelter and stuff?
That's where it gets tricky. I tend to shoot, like when I'm doing the hut-to-hut stuff, I can bring a drone and maybe, a couple extra cameras. Whereas, with traditional stuff where you're carrying a sleeping and shelter system, I'm kind of limited to just a GoPro and a couple spare batteries. So I would say you can make a film, just the quality isn't as good typically.
Okay. Yeah. And I want to dive into the film side because I think that's the most inspiring and probably where you're best known too.
Sure.
Do you head into, let's start with Fast Packer and Adventure that's kind of more scripted, I guess. Do you know what the goal or the ethos or what you're going to be shooting on that adventure? And then we'll get into a race next, but on that like Fast Pack?
Yeah, it kind of depends. I mean, if you look at the broader story, like we did, for example, this was more, a soft packing adventure. We did what's often referred to as soft rock, which is fast packing the hard rock course. And we did it pretty soft. We had vehicle support. We stayed in hotels, for one night at least. And then again at the end. And so it was really just multi-day trail running with some support. And made a film, but we were, carrying the camera gear with us. And for that one, there's this structure, of course. We did it over 4 days. We're going to hit certain places along the way. And I already had a sense of, I'll do research in advance and I'll think about certain beats that I want to hit. Like, okay, on day 1, I'll probably talk about, the course a little bit. Day 2, I might start to talk more about backcountry safety. Day 3, we're going to hit this part in the course. I might talk about the history of this place or whatever. And so I'm often kind of scripting, either just really informally, I have some ideas, or sometimes like I literally have notes that I'll refer to. And even like as we're hiking up the pass, I might like look back at my notes and be like, okay, let me make sure I get those stats right. So I can kind of, I can talk to the camera and make it look like I know what I'm talking about.
Wow.
So it kind of depends, but the short answer is increasingly I'm scripting these more and more in advance.
Okay. And then let's move into, because your double threat at least or more is into the trail running racing side of it.
Sure.
How do you have any idea how that's going to go ahead of time?
Again, it's sort of like there'll be beats I want to hit. Like I might know I want to talk about a certain feature on the course. Maybe it's the geology, maybe it's some kind of historical thing. I might have sponsors I know I need to plug because, at the end of the day, they're sponsoring a film as much as my run or me as an athlete. So I might I got to remember to talk about my nutrition and how I'm approaching that at some point. And I will try to space that out throughout the film. So I'm almost like editing it in my mind as I go. But of course, I don't know how I'm going to perform yet in the race. The story, the overarching story, is this going to be a victorious story? Am I going to DNF? Am I going to, am I going to have problems with the heat? I don't know. But part of the trick with storytelling is you do want to kind of open these loops and try to foreshadow stuff. So, and this is something that my girlfriend Audrey and I talk about a lot in advance of these races. We'll sometimes sort of brainstorm like what could go wrong and what should we talk about in the films? Because you want things to, for example, let's say you're 30 miles into a 100-miler and you get this kind of little niggle in your leg or whatever. And if that might become a problem later on for you, you got to start talking about it early in the film so you can foreshadow it. And so again, something that Audrey and I will talk about is like, if you find you're having a problem like that, talk about it. If it goes away and becomes like a nothing burger, then we just won't use it. We just won't use that shot. But that way, if it does come up and potentially even becomes the reason that you, again, DNF or something, then we've at least foreshadowed it earlier on. And it feels like it's almost scripted in that sense,
Wow. So at the same time, something adverse might come up, you're trying to foreshadow it and problem solve it for the sense that you're also in a race at the same time.
Exactly. So you're trying to be in it. Obviously, you're in it, you're experiencing while also looking at it from a 30,000 foot, like director's view. Like, how is this going to work into the story? And that I would argue is the hardest part about trying to tell a story, trying to film while you're doing this. but also can make it easier because it does force you to sort of look at this thing objectively. You know,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, it's like, it's not life or death. You know, we're out there just kind of running around the mountains. And so sometimes having that perspective and being able to go like, how am I going to tell this story when I inevitably do survive and come out the other side okay? How am I going to tell the story? Sometimes I think helps you maintain perspective in the moment.
Totally. Yeah. And it's fascinating that you're out there almost directing yourself while not really knowing the entirety of the story at the same time, too. It just seems mentally exhausting. Like Moab, for example, where it seems like was going well, but then was going extremely well by the end of it as you moved into second place. Did that change
and
everything?
Well, so that's a good example of one where I don't think I did a good enough job, maybe forecasting what my goals for that race were. I didn't say it out loud, but I was aiming pretty firmly for a podium position in that, kind of looking around the field based on my experience. That was more something we talked about, Audrey and I, where it's like, if my day goes well, I should be able to crack the top 5-ish, depending on who else is out there and how their days go. But I was aiming for a podium position. I didn't think I'd be racing for first place, though. And so that was a nice kind of like turn of events. It was like a nice, like, as far as the story goes, right? Forget my own race results, like that aside, just from a storytelling perspective. But in hindsight, I probably could have done a better job of, maybe forecasting that, like, I am here to race, even if it doesn't look like it, because the first 100 miles of a 200 miler is really just a warm up. Like, I personally don't race from the start of those races, although increasingly maybe we're going to see people doing that, even at the 200-mile distance, like racing from the start. But yeah, I kind of knowing what I know now, I probably would have approached the story a little bit differently. But fortunately, I use a voiceover, and voiceovers can act as a bit of a crutch, because then I get to do things like foreshadowing after the fact in my voiceover. And that's something I do in that film, for example. In the intro, I sort of foreshadow the fact that this ends up going, like you said, it's like I'm racing, but then all of a sudden I'm racing even more aggressively at the front. So I get to kind of use the voiceover as a bit of a crutch.
Yeah. So in that one, is it almost like the race went really well, you feel great as an athlete, but on the film side, are you just like, oh, I wish I'd been a little more intentional putting stuff out? Like, is it hard to get a win or a success in both those realms? It just seems very fascinating.
Yeah, I would almost put it a different way. So, and I've said this a few times publicly and kind of, to friends, where I think the result of it being a close finish, but not exactly, I'm sure, as far as spoiling the film, like where Jesse still beat me by 5-6 minutes, but it was close. I actually think that made for a better story than if I had won it, especially because Jesse, had said a few times, like he was going to drop. Like he tried to drop at one point and couldn't quite figure out where to drop. And then he decided just to finish. And had he dropped, and I would have maybe potentially finished 3 hours ahead of Aaron in third, who would have been in second, I don't think that would have made for a very good story. And so from a purely storytelling perspective, I liked the beats in that film and how it played out and how I think it kind of leaves you wanting more as opposed to, and so, yeah, I wasn't, sure it would have been great to have won, but again, like part of me was there to tell a good story, and I'm part athlete and part storyteller, and I'm almost willing to sacrifice one for the other in a way.
Totally. Yeah. I think that's the fun part too, is it brings people in so close. I mean, as close as you can get without running a race. And that's what draws people into both sides of the adventure. And I think just fast packing and trail running are so closely related, but we kind of ignore that most of the time. How did you get into ultra running or trail running? We can go with.
I started running pretty late in life, or relatively in my late 20s. I think it was 27. I ran a few marathons. And then when I was about 30, I discovered trail running. And partly it was because, I was running marathons as kind of a bucket list thing. I did a few. And then I met a guy who was running, I think a 50K. And I was like, really? There's something longer. And then he was telling me about these 100-milers he ran. And it blew my mind, right? It's like, I didn't know there was anything longer. And I started trail running, and the rest is history. Like, once you start trail running, it's hard to go back. And for me, it was mostly about the community that I found in trails, which was so different than road. Like, and now, fast forward a decade or so, 14 years actually on the trails, most of my friends are trail runners. So it's, you end up, it goes from a hobby to a lifestyle to really like, all your friends are runners. Like you wouldn't, it's hard to imagine your life without it at some point. And that's kind of been my story as well.
Totally. Yeah. And then when did the YouTube or sharing the journey come into play?
I've been a professional video producer my whole life, essentially my whole working career. I've had a video production agency for 20 years. So I started doing it more because with my agency, with my company, I don't do like more of in a management role, or exclusively in a management role, I should say. I haven't touched a camera in a lot of years. So the YouTube thing became a bit of just my creative outlet. It was on the side. I was telling some stories, getting my hands dirty a little bit still. I really enjoy editing. I enjoy storytelling. And again, I don't get to do that anymore with my day job. So that was it. And it was, I've got this new hobby, this new passion for running. Let's try telling some stories there. And I think it was one of my initial successful films would have been from Tour des Géants. I did Tour des Géants in the Italian Alps in 2018. It was my first 200+ mile race. And that film did pretty well because it's a big race, right? It's like the UTMB of 200s. And from there, I started getting a little bit of traction, and I thought, maybe I should do more of this, but do it more intentionally, and maybe I could build a business out of it, which I didn't really lean into until really 2020. So I've kind of been doing it now, where it's almost become my full-time job for about 4 years.
Yeah. Okay. And did you add in, was fast packing something that was there along the way, or was that an intentional add? Because they're closely related, but they are kind of two different audiences is the trick.
They are. So I've always been, I consider myself more of an adventure style trail runner. I'm more project focused as opposed to race focused. And I like to use big adventures as a way to like trick myself into training for races. Like if I do a 100-mile week, it's not because I'm out doing big tempo runs and stuff. It's because I'm doing 100 miles on the Tour de Mont Blanc or something. So I find it's a great way to enjoy the process of training more than what I would otherwise, while enjoying like these epic views and having these great adventures. If anything, I almost do it for the adventures as opposed to the racing. The racing just gives me structure to my year. It's like a good reason to taper once in a while and a good reason to have an off season. But for me, it really is all about the adventures. And so that naturally led to then, beyond doing just big days in the mountains, why not doing multiple days? So then you can do these bigger routes, or you could do routes that, like the Wonderland Trail around Mount Rainier, I think was my first fast pack. We did it over 2 days, one night. Those were big days, like 50-mile days. But I didn't have 6 days to backpack it. So it's like, let's just run it, right? And it kind of took off from there. And then when it comes to the YouTube side of things, I realized it's really kind of ripe for storytelling because you're not under the same time pressures that you are in a race. And you're able to tell more stories. Again, I can carry a drone and take time, like stop, spend 15 minutes getting the drone up in the air, or whatever it might be, run, set up the camera, run past it, go back and get the camera, things I would never do in a race. And so I think it also just, again, it's ripe for storytelling. We can choose these routes that have a lot of history maybe and talk about the history in the films. And in doing so, I realized I think I might have found a bit of a niche as well. And fast packing as a term, as a style of running, I think is so intuitive and yet feels so new. And it doesn't feel like a lot of people are doing it. So now it's become almost like an ethos of the channel, or almost like a mission of mine I have to kind of show people that like this is something you can do. A lot of people are doing it. They're just not really talking about it as much. And I think when it comes to that hut-to-hut style of trail running, it's super accessible. Like that soft packing approach, anybody can do it. You don't need a lot of experience. Again, a little bit trickier with the ultralight side. And then, so the opportunity there as well is now I'm crossing over into new audiences, people who are more coming from a hiking background or a traditional backpacking background, who maybe want to speed up a little bit and see a little bit more, get a little fitter. I'm tapping into those audiences as well with my films.
Totally. Yeah. And I think it's not a super crowded niche or anything either, because the whole ethos of fast packing is so light that it's like throw out the camera and don't take it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
and you kind of got to put in your like big days quite often, right? To get so it's hard to spend the time. I would say though, for me, my approach and the way I sort of evangelize fast packing, I'm not trying to tell people to go faster. I'm not saying, hey, backpackers, lose the gear and start running, get this thing done in 2 days instead of 5. That's not what I'm saying. The opposite. I'm saying, hey, trail runners, instead of going and doing these 50K routes in 14 hours, like, if you're doing something like the Rockwall Trail up in the Canadian Rockies, where you're starting in the dark and you're finishing in the dark, slow down a little. bring some camping gear, split them up into 7-8 hour days and enjoy it and spend a night in the Alpine. So I'm actually kind of telling people, I'm speaking to runners and saying, slow down, spend more time out there. I think that's the sweet spot.
Totally. Yeah. And as I put fast packing, it's lightening your load so you can move faster, which doesn't mean finishing the route faster, but it's, you can spend 2 hours at a great view or swimming in a lake versus the 30 minutes, or you can get to camp earlier and enjoy it. It's not a miles per day, which I think as brands have sort of tried to take over the fast packing space, they're missing. And as they build a pack, it's just like faster, longer, like harder. And it's like, I think the ethos is totally the opposite of if you're going to like backpack around Mount Blanc or something, you can stop anytime you want and enjoy it because you have this built-in buffer because you're lighter and faster.
You nailed it. And that's when I get criticism on my fast packing films, is from people who say, what's the rush? Why are you rushing? And it's like, we're not. Yeah, we might run the 10 miles of fire service road, but then once we get into the Alpine, we like you said, we now have a buffer. We can sit and enjoy it and maybe tag an extra peak or two that a hiker wouldn't have time to do, or frankly, wouldn't have the fitness quite often to do. So you can do bigger days by even just adding stuff on. And that's a way to see more and experience more. I see it as being completely additive. You're not subtracting from anything. And I think that's the common misconception. Having said that, some people do approach it that way as well, which is fine. But I think if you take that to its natural conclusion, you eliminate the camping altogether and you end up running all night. And now you're back to just trail running. So again, I see it more as this, in a way, it's slowing people down.
Yep. Well, I think it's like a wider range. Like it could encapsulate fairly traditional backpacking up to nearly encapsulating trail running or something like that, just where you're camping. And even like growing up in Washington with big descents and things like that, the view's great, but you might have 8 miles of descending and you might want to enjoy that view for 20, 30 minutes. And then you might want to run and get that out of the way because there's a river at the bottom to soak in. So.
Exactly. And I think the other thing that some people miss as well in, again, the some of the criticism I do receive, and there's not a lot of it, but it's that as runners, we like to run. Like we just like the feeling of moving swiftly on trails. So it's not an either or thing. Like, it's not like, oh, this is a beautiful trail, we should just hike it. It's like, well, no, we can still run in a beautiful trail. So I think it's kind of combining. It's for people who do want to combine an element of speed, but also want to have an element of sort of backcountry multi-day adventure. That's what fast packing is for. And it's not for everybody.
Yeah. And I believe you basically fast packed around Mount Blanc and then ran UTMB, right? Like
we did it as training. And so I always had this as my plan. My good friend Gary Robbins ran UTMB years ago, and he's talked about it, and we've talked about it. And he always said the way to do UTMB is to go a few weeks early, fast pack it over 3, 4, 5 days so you can see it all, because you miss so much of it at night. Take your photos, eat the food, have the espressos, enjoy it. And it's perfect training as well. But also you kind of get the best of both worlds that way. And then you race it. And so I always had that in my head that if and when I ever ran UTMB, that's what I would do. And that's exactly what we did. Both my girlfriend Audrey and I, we fast packed it, then we ran it. And I think that's the perfect way to experience it. And if you had to choose, I would say fast packing is better than racing it. Because again, you get to see it all during the day and enjoy it.
Yeah, let's dive into that a little more. So what is the style? Do you hike between huts each day? Do you get breakfast and dinner provided? Like, what's the European style?
Totally. So that European style, again, soft packing, like the hut-to-hut fast packing, it's essentially just hut-to-hut trail running, is super accessible because all you really need is what you would normally carry for a day in the mountains, plus a little bit more for the huts at night. So typically that's a 12-liter, maybe a 15-liter pack for some people. You still need your waterproof, your warm layers, all your emergency gear, your water filtration, all the stuff you would normally carry for a big day out. And then for the huts, they provide all the food, or at least you can get all the food if you can afford to. And that usually means a dinner and then a breakfast in the morning, which would be considered full board, along with, of course, a bed overnight. And optionally, they'll give you a packed lunch. But on a tour on a route like the Tour de Mont Blanc, you're running through towns. So you can actually just run into a town and get a sandwich. And you're pretty much going through at least one town a day. And then you can also stock up on snacks like Snickers bars and stuff. So we usually don't even carry any. We'll carry a few hours of run food basically for emergencies. They sometimes have showers, not at the high mountain huts, but if you wanted to shower, you could. But we'll usually then carry just one spare change of clothes. And for me, I always like things to be double, something I can use while on the trail as well, if need be. So for me, that's usually like a merino wool base layer, for example, where if we ended up hitting some snow on the trail, I could actually wear that as well. So everything serves dual purpose, but no change of clothes for the running. You're putting back on the same dirty run clothes. They're going to get dirty in the first hour anyway, right? So you put on one change of clothes at night. Maybe you got a toothbrush and some other basic toiletries, and usually a silk bed liner is all you're required for the beds. They have bedding otherwise. So super minimal. Like I said, it's about your regular 12 liters plus a couple liters extra worth of kit.
Okay. And then, so you essentially fast pack this soft packet or whatever. And then do you stay until the race in Chamonix or somewhere nearby?
So in that case, I think the first time we did it, we went to Annecy nearby. And then I think we spent a week in La Plagne, which is another ski resort area nearby. So, I mean, the best case scenario, if you can afford it, is to take a month off, go early, you fly into Chamonix, you fly into Geneva, rather, you take a bus to Chamonix, you fast pack the route over 3, 4, 5 days, and then you spend a couple of weeks tapering, maybe in nearby Annecy, beautiful city, beautiful lake, and there's some nice trails there as well. And then you come back to Chamonix for the race.
Yeah. And so now since I think it's so foreign to people in the US, let's dive into the UTMB experience. Like so many people, such a party. Did you have a plan for a film too, or was it too crazy to really know what was going to come out of that?
No, we definitely approached that one. I mean, running UTMB was always a dream of ours, like UTMB Chamonix specifically, not, some of the other races, that's a whole separate conversation. But, and I knew it was a race I wanted to experience once, and I'm glad I did. And we can talk about the pros and cons of that race. It's not for everybody, but we knew we would make a film as well, because that is one of the most, if not the most well-known race in the world. And So we knew it would perform well, and it has. It's been my best performing project. So for us, that was sort of like an investment. We didn't get the race entries for free. I mean, we paid for everything. We rented Airbnbs, all that stuff. So it was a very expensive project, flights, all that stuff included. But it's definitely made that back and more. And it's also helped the channel grow. So we definitely approached it as an investment that way. And it was a good race in that sense as well, because we weren't there to race other people, It is such a big field. It's not like we're, the difference between me filming is like finishing 160th versus 180th or something, right? Like it's not going to make a huge difference in a race that size.
Yeah. And did you, just from fast pack or soft packing, did you know kind of what you wanted to shoot or capture?
Yeah,
okay.
Totally. So we used the fast pack as a location scout. So I knew, it's funny, actually, I've been meaning to make a side-by-side film of the two, both to show the experience, but also as kind of some inside baseball a little bit, like how the films are so similar. Because I 100% used the fast pack as a location scout. So I already knew, for example, the balcony heading out of Courmayeur on the Italian side, which is one of the most beautiful sections. I knew, okay, on this part, I'm going to switch my camera to slow motion. I'm going to do a little slow motion sequence. And it almost mirrors exactly what we did on the fast packing film. And I knew even some of the corners, like I knew, here's that part coming up where as we turned, you get a great shot of the glacier. So there's definitely, like, I had a shot list. We had scouted the course, even thinking about where the light might be good. Like we knew there was going to be a nice sunrise if we hit this one spot around the right time. So that 100%, it basically served as a way to scout it out. And I've actually done that on a couple projects as well now. Hard Rock is another one where, in fast packing the route recently, and the film's about to come out, and we did a really good job on that one, I think, in how much we planned. And I had my buddy Derek Lytle out there with the drone filming as well. And that now is going to set us up for success when inevitably we hopefully soon go back and film the race itself when I finally get into Hard Rock. Derek will be my guy there. We've already scouted out. We already kind of have estimates on drive times and, where the best shots might be. So that's kind of part of this, like trying to go into these projects a little bit more prepared now, leaving less to chance. because there's already so much left to chance when it comes to the weather and when it comes to my own athletic performance. So at least we can eliminate some of the other variables where we can.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing is talking about location scouting and stuff, but you're not doing a scripted film. You have to run 100 miles with 25,000 feet of gain or something.
Or,
I think that's the craziest part of the whole, you can plan so much and then you just hold on for dear life that the plan works, I think.
yeah, and some of that is like, so Derek also worked with me on my Moab 240 film, and fortunately he knew the area and he knew the drive times. He even knew where some of the good shots were. So he had already kind of effectively done some of that location scouting. So part of this is now I've realized it's who I hire, who I work with. Mm-hmm. So I haven't done it yet, but increasingly I'm hoping to start hiring local filmmakers in Europe, for example, where they'll know the terrain and they'll know where legally they can film and where they can't and where the best shots are. And again, how to get there, what the drive times are, all the stuff that if you underestimate, they can end up missing me on the course, right? So I think part of that is hiring locals to work with who know this stuff better than I do.
Totally. Do you have any horror stories from adventures of broken gear, missing batteries, or things that just didn't work out and went haywire?
No. Fortunately, I haven't had anything major. I haven't had like a card, for example, get corrupted where I completely lose the footage. Yeah. I do typically always carry at least 2 cameras. For example, I'll have my GoPro and my Insta360. So if halfway through the race, like the GoPro just literally won't turn on, at least I'll have a camera I can film with. But that won't change. Say I cross the finish line and the card doesn't work. Having said that, I do sometimes hedge my bets a little bit. UTMB, I crossed the finish line more than once because I wanted different angles, and there's nobody around. It was like 2 a.m, 3 a.m. So I ran across it with my GoPro. Then the first time I ran across it, I wanted clean photos. And then I ran back again with my 360 camera.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Do you have it where you're like out on a trail and trying to talk to the camera, but then you like see a big group, so you have to stop and start?
Yeah, totally. And increasingly too, I mean, again, like I'll do multiple takes which might feel silly, and maybe it's because I'm a little bit too much of a perfectionist, and it doesn't really matter. Maybe I'm overthinking a lot of this, but I'll do a take and I'll do it until I get it right as like a nice, concise 20-second thing. So even though it feels very off the cuff, I've been thinking about that maybe for the last 2 hours as I'm climbing. Like, okay, I should say something about this, and I'm getting my thoughts together, and I'll do multiple takes. But often I'll even hedge my bets too, where I'll do it in different locations, because I'll do it once and I might think like, I think that wind was too heavy and it might not sound great. So I'll do it again later to make sure I have a safety take in case I need it. So I'm definitely doing a lot more of that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it embarrassing to walk back and forth in front of the camera a few times when people are watching too?
So I've gotten in like the vlogging sphere, the old, the kind of the trope is like getting comfortable talking to a camera in an airport. Like that's like the thing, right? If you're like a travel vlogger, and I've gotten comfortable finally where I can literally walk down in an airport talking to the camera. I'm finally at that point where I can do that. So I'm less embarrassed about it. I more just don't want to bother people, especially on the trail. I don't want to be that guy. So I'm mostly more, it's not embarrassed for myself. It's more like, I just don't want to be that guy. If I can hide the fact that we're making a film as much as possible, I will try to. Yeah.
And then does that come into play with like drones and stuff too? Because they can be loud and annoying.
100%. I mean, so most races I work with the race organizers, and this is how some of my films have gotten such amazing footage, is because I'll be typically invited by a race, often have the race comped, but worst case, even if I am paying and all that, I'll at least ask for the drone footage, and 9 times out of 10 I can get that, because they know my film will leverage that footage more than their sort of 3-minute promo that goes on their website, right? So I end up with this incredible drone footage, often from, again, these local videographers who know the terrain so well. So we got that like in the Pyrenees, we got this incredible drone footage from the same team that worked with Killian recently on his project.
Wow.
We had like in Namibia, like all these places, I'm just running with the GoPro and somebody else is filming me with their drone. So basically what that means is I don't have to bring another person with another drone. There's already the official race videographer. I'm not adding more to it. Where we do bring drones, we try to be, well, first of all, we always try to be completely legal and above board. In the States, that means a pilot with his Part 107 commercial license. We try to get permits, and we never fly in a national park where we're not supposed to. We were in Ireland recently. We were working with tourism there, so they actually got us permits to a lot of places. And usually that meant flying only in certain hours of the day, like before something's open or after it closes. I am, again, it just goes back to that. Like, I just don't want to be a nuisance. I don't want to be considered a vlogger. We're trying to make films. We're trying to make documentaries that are only a net positive for the community in general, the outdoor community. And that means never taking away from the experience of people who are there with me on the trail.
Yeah. Where do you want it to go? Because they are incredible quality for YouTube, no slight on YouTube. Do you see them getting bigger? I mean, you're probably hitting bigger audiences maybe they'd hit on a streaming service, but is that a goal to be in a more mainstream media?
Not a goal in itself, but I would say I definitely don't consider myself like a YouTuber. It just happens to be where I'm publishing my films right now.
Totally.
One of my goals right now, for example, is to try to make a film each year that is like theater worthy. So we premiered the Moab 240 film in a theater here in Vancouver last year, and we're doing the same thing with Soft Rock next week, actually. And I can look at that project and be super proud and excited to see it on the big screen because it's 4K. Again, beautiful drone footage from Derek. I spent a lot of time color correcting it, and it's all sort of like to spec when it comes to the audio and things. There's some technical specifications you need to meet to play it in a theater like that. So right now, my goal is like, if I can at least have one project a year like that, where I'm proud to see it on the big screen. There's other ones I maybe wouldn't because they're mostly GoPro footage.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I haven't really thought too much about it. I would like to reach a wider audience, but I don't really care how that happens. And I'm enjoying right now being able to create completely unencumbered from politics and from executives. I know working with Netflix, I would no longer own the creative process. And then to what end, right? So
yeah,
I haven't really thought too much further aside from my own goals of just like wanting to do bigger and cooler projects. And if Nat Geo was to call me next week and say, we want you to go and do some crazy idea, I would be in, as long as it's a project that excites me. So for me, it's more about, I want to go to more places, cooler places, spend more time out there, have bigger crews and tell cooler stories with higher production values. However I get there, whoever I have to work with to do that is sort of secondary.
Totally. I want to get kind of into this new thing that's come up in the last maybe 5 years of short form versus long form content, because it's so interesting. It's like we made this shift and then it's swung back to a lot more acceptance of long form. Yeah. What's your opinion and the downside of just that short form buzz that people love on like TikTok?
So I don't watch short form content much myself. I do, but I'll watch it like when I'm kind of bored scrolling, just for humor based content mostly.
It's so good for humor. Yeah.
Dog videos. Like, but I'm not looking to be inspired by or even really entertained for I still like sitting down and watching, a 3-hour Christopher Nolan film, right? So like when I want to be entertained, I want to sit down and really immerse myself in a story. And I make stories, the kind of stories I would want to watch. I don't know how else to make any content otherwise. I wouldn't know what's good, like and so I just make it for myself. And there's enough people out there who like similar content. That's one reason why I'm making increasingly long films, like some up to 90 minutes, and why I stayed away from short form, especially when it comes to these kind of stories. But then also, I think strategically speaking, I'm not convinced that short form audiences convert to long form because the expectations are completely out of whack. So if I hook you on YouTube or any other platform, if I become like a popular TikToker, how do I get you from 30 seconds or a minute to 90 minutes? They're completely different experiences, completely different connections. They can both exist in parallel, but I don't see how they'd be connected. So I want people to find my content who are looking and who are ready for 30, 60, 90 minutes to really immerse themselves, and ideally to watch my content on a big screen. And right now, over 50% of my audience watches my stuff on a connected TV. So now when I make the films, I can make the graphics a little bit smaller, for example, because I know it's going to be watched bigger, which I would do the opposite, not doing too many hard-coded subtitles. I can have wider landscape shots where the runner is really small because I know people are watching it on a 60-inch 4K TV.
Yeah.
And again, I think my audiences are now primed where it's like, not everybody, it's not for everybody, but if it is for you, it's all going to be for you. And you're going to be anticipating, and you're not going to be like surprised by the next, like, what, this thing's 60 minutes? I don't have time for that. Right. So I just don't understand how you can do both and build a consistent audience.
Do you think the short form explosion is creating like this loss of touch with, I don't know, like the creator or the channel or the style behind things, because you can just quickly scroll through it after you like it?
Yeah, because at the same time that we saw the short form boom over the last few years. And as you said, now we've seen a bit of a long form renaissance, but all the while podcasting has been booming, and podcasting is by its nature very, very long form. So you're out for a run, maybe listening to, Finn Melanson in your ear for 90 minutes. Right. And, so it's like, you develop this parasocial relationship where you start to feel like you know a person, that you have this relationship with a person. And then what happens, and this happens to me as well, and it probably happens to you. People probably walk up to you and say, I feel like I know you. Like,
yeah, it's
right?
Really weird. That's where I wanted to go next. Yeah.
That's the parasocial relationship. I don't think you get that with short form. I think you only get that with long form, because if I'm listening to you in my ear for 90 minutes, like every week, I mean, I might end up spending more time with you than I spend with most of my good friends or my family.
Yeah.
And then if you want to, you can leverage that in different ways. I mean, we sell trips now where, we take people traveling with us. We want to spread this like joy of travel and adventure-based running. And we bring people along on these adventures now. And I think that's only possible because they know, like, and trust us, because of the longer form content. I don't think I would be able to do that if I was only doing shorter TikTok videos, for example.
Yeah. So I guess 2-part question, that, have you felt that, or do you get that where people know you as well as you know yourself, just from, or think they do because of your videos, and you're talking to the camera and it's if you're talking to them? And then how did that become this, like, you're the second person I've talked to with kind of the Trova trip or the trip style. Yeah. How did you turn that into that, and how's it gone so far?
Yeah, so the parasocial relationship tends to materialize in like a couple of ways, and it's, again, it's only started now for us, but it increasingly, especially when we go to races, we'll get that. Some people will come up and say, I'm actually here because of you, to some degree, and then, but so usually they'll say something explicit, like, I feel like I know you, like, this is kind of weird. Yeah. Or they won't say that. They'll just start talking to me like they do know me. And they won't even introduce themselves. I'm like, hold on, sorry, have we met? Oh, sorry, no, I listen to you all the time. So that's sometimes the second way it can materialize, and people don't even tell me their name. And
it's so hard when that happens, because they know a million things about you and you know nothing about them, and you have to start with, what's your name? And it just feels like this broken conversation where all the information's on one side of it.
And I would never want to assume that they know more than they do. So especially if I'm in a race and we're running beside each other, you can end up spending 20 minutes talking to somebody during a race. And, I might say, well, I did this race called the Moab 240 last year. And they're like, yeah, dude, I know. But I don't want to assume, and then they'll say, yeah, I remember you were here before. And sometimes, like, they've been following for years and they know all the places I've been. And so there's definitely like an imbalance of information.
Yeah.
Like, if we were engaged in a negotiation, that could put me at a disadvantage, but it's fun. Like, it's all cool, but it can be a little awkward sometimes, I find, especially for me. I'm not the most, like, outgoing person. And so, yeah. And then as far as then, with these trips, I think again, that's where we've had a fairly easy time selling some of these trips, because I think people they've seen our approach to this, as far as whether we are respectful, or how much we rush through things, or how we approach travel, how we approach adventure, safety. I think they just have a sense that, like, they're going to be safe, they're going to be comfortable, they're going to be, I think they can see themselves in the adventures we're doing and maybe want to be a part of that. And there's that element of trust, which I think, again, is so important. It's almost like they've, like, we're trying to, I think, kind of sell the dream a little bit by demonstrating it. And then, and then I think for a lot of people, it's a confidence thing where anybody can go and do the Tour de Mont Blanc, for example, and book the refuges. But for some people and we've heard this from people who have joined us, they said, I just would have never done this on my own. Now that I've done it though, I feel like I can go and do this on my own. But they needed somebody to kind of hold their hand a little bit, give them a bit of a nudge. And part of that nudge is like just signing up for our trip. And then by the end of it, you'll see that it's not that scary. It's not that hard. The other part of it is for some people they just don't have a lot of time. And they're like, you know what, let me just pay somebody to do all the legwork for me, booking the huts. Some of them are in French. You got to pay in euros. You got to do wire transfers. Like some of it's a little bit weird and it takes a lot of research. By just paying like any trip you might take, any tour, you get picked up at the airport and you get dropped off a week later and everything's taken care of for you. So you're not throwing money at the problem and you get to run with a cool group of people. And I think that's maybe the third thing is I think people maybe trust us. I like to think this is the case, that they trust that we'll put a kind of a good group of people together who share common values. It's not going to be these like random people. Everybody's kind of, again, shares common values because they all kind of watch our content and maybe have different backgrounds, but are kind of all there for a similar reason, for a shared experience.
Yeah, totally. And I want to move into more. So you start this channel, it starts getting traction, growing, and then it sounds like it's, whether totally intentional or not, it's grown to as much of a brand, which is bigger than YouTube as well. Is that intentional and kind of the direction you're moving, as maybe you work less on your supposed day job and more on this adventure presentation lifestyle?
Yeah. So like I said, I see myself less as a YouTuber and more as like a filmmaker, content creator. It could be for any platform, but also I do look at it as a business. It's a media company that needs to be self-sustainable. We mostly do that through advertising, mostly through the programmatic ads on YouTube, but then also through some sponsorships and integrations, and now working with tours and departments, potentially selling merch. It's kind of new for us. We have some t-shirts. Doesn't make a lot of money, but it's a little bit. Affiliate marketing. So having affiliate links when I do talk about gear, make a small commission off that. The trips form a part of that. So part of this is, strategically, you kind of want to diversify your income streams. And that's thinking about it as a media company, where my job is to make films ultimately. It needs to be sustainable. And we have huge costs, like, again, travel, in some cases, still race entry fees. People might look at that and say, well, that doesn't count. You'd be doing that anyway. Well, we wouldn't be doing this much of it. And I think we are now picking projects, or at least we're doing projects in a style that I wouldn't be able to afford to do otherwise. And that I think, like the Bob Graham round, for example, when I did that in England, that was a personal goal of mine, to be clear, but I also knew it would make a good story and a good film. And so I invested heavily. I spent a full month there because I wanted to do it justice, again, personally, but also if I'm going to tell a story about it, I want to pay homage and be respectful to the traditions of the round. And part of that is you recce it. You give back by helping somebody else. You pace for them. You don't just fly in for a weekend and leave. So to do it right meant spending a lot of money on Airbnbs, car rentals, flights, all that stuff. And so running the numbers and trying to figure out, like, how can I do that right, but also make it sustainable from a financial point of view. That's where you get into all the ads and the sponsorships and all those kind of things. But I'm not running that business as a way to make money. Best case, I do, but worst case, it at least pays for itself. But for it to be sustainable, that probably means also paying for other people to help me. So it does potentially mean hiring editors eventually and different people. And so, there's still this, like, I still have a goal of growing it simply for the sake of, again, I want to do bigger and cooler projects. And so something as simple as being able to hire a drone operator to come with me is a real expense. So if I was approaching it just to try to, like, squeeze every dollar I could, I would just rest on my laurels and try to just, like, pinch pennies, right? And instead of kind of investing back into the projects.
Or just do, like, gear reviews with affiliate links or something.
100%. Just do gear reviews, never leave the house, and you can grow a channel and make money off that. But I want to be able to look back in another 10 years and I want somebody to find my channel in 5 years and be like, holy shit, there's a treasure trove of projects here dating back to, 2020. Races all over the world, adventures, all places I've never heard of, and they could just sit and binge for months. Like, that's what I want for it to be a portfolio. that I can look back on. And simultaneously, personally, a portfolio that reflects my own experiences, where I've had all these cool trips, I've done all these cool adventures, and it's funding that opportunity for me to do those personally as well. So it's important that it's not success by any means. Therefore, I'll just lean into doing gear videos. That would be a failure. The point is I get to do cool shit, like kind of for a living, which is
totally
so far has been working out. It also means I don't necessarily need to always be making trail running focused content.
Yeah.
Maybe bike packing is in our future. Maybe we'll do a 7-day rafting trip down the Grand Canyon. I mean, as long as we can tell a cool story that's outdoor adventure related, I'm fairly confident our audience will come along for the ride.
Yeah, that's the incredible part is there's so many creators you see or filmmakers who pigeonhole themselves into such a narrow niche and they try to go outside of that and the videos just bomb. But presenting yourself and already testing the waters across multiple niches, but as an adventurer, I think is really your true brilliance and genius. So I think that's just so smart.
Well, I would say that it really comes back down to exactly what we talked about around short form. It's like, why is your audience here? What's the value proposition? If they come for the short form, they might not stay for the long form. So I'm trying to build from the ground up slowly but surely, so slow and steady growth, an audience who is here for long form storytelling, adventure-based storytelling. Yes, that happens to be about running right now, but the audience, I feel like they're here for the stories more so than the results or the running or it's got to be beautiful, but even that, it's got to be adventurous.
Yeah.
It's got to be like aspirational, inspirational, but I think it's just got to be entertaining mostly.
Yeah. Well, or inspiring in some way. I mean, there's like the few categories something has to be, but I want to move into the question because you've done a couple stage races too. Why don't you think North Americans do any stage races?
We have a couple. We have the Grand to Grand Ultra was my very first stage race back in 2014. And I
actually did that this year.
You did? Oh, sorry, I missed that. What did you think?
It was good. Stage racing is very different than fast packing or FKTs or ultras, but it was really good for me to do something that different, I think.
I think that's the hardest one I've done still, because it's the longest one. I've done a couple by a company called Racing the Planet that aren't quite as long. And Grand to Grand, like, I think the course might still be the same. The first 2 days, I was like kicking cactuses and getting like stuff stuck in, having to pull out like cactus spires or whatever it calls from my toe.
And it's marked like down a road and then you turn off and you're bushwhacking for like 5 miles. It's like, why don't we just stay on the road?
The Racing the Planet races are like that as well. It's like you're on a road, you're like, oh, thank God. They're like, no, just kidding. Go across this farm field for like 2 miles and like knee deep mud. Yeah. Part of that, I think, is permitting as well. Like it's, Grand to Grand is a tricky race because I know they go through some private property that you wouldn't otherwise get to go through. And there's some really beautiful slot canyons and things. It's just a tough race. But I love the logistics of that because it combines, it's like if you think about it like a Venn diagram, right? You've got like trail running, you've got fast packing, and you've got racing, and it kind of combines like those three elements. Like or I guess you could say it's like fast pack racing, right?
Or even like unsupported, like FKT or something where you have to logistically prepare so much ahead of time. Because once you start, there's very little you can change.
Totally. Because there's no crew. You're carrying your own food for the week typically. Well, we should say, so for the audience, right? Like that race is a self-supported stage race, meaning you carry everything from the start to finish. Anything you want to eat for those 7 days, you carry from the start. The only thing you're given is water on the course and a shelter at night. So you're given a tent, but you have your own sleeping pad, your own sleeping bag and everything. But there are stage races that are fully supported. We did one in the Pyrenees stage run, which was like buffet dinners and like 4-star hotels. And let me tell you, that was like a running vacation. Awesome. And that's, again, I think if you're looking at stage racing from an accessibility standpoint, like that's supported stage racing is more like hut-to-hut fast packing. It's a great place to start because at least you're learning to run multi-day and how important the recovery is. And then once you get that figured out, because there's strategy involved just in running multiple days in a row, then you can, I think, layer in all of the gear. Because the gear is so important, unfortunately. I almost wish these races would just give you the kit. A standard bag and say, here you go. Because that would eliminate a variable, kind of like in the cycling world, where it's so much of it comes down to like the bike. right? And the pros have such an advantage. And I think it's similar. There is a direct correlation in those races between where you finish, if you finish, but also where you finish and how light your pack is.
Yeah, the lightest pack usually wins.
Almost always. Not because they have the lightest pack, but I think because how you do anything is how you do everything. And the way they approached their gear selection is how they approach their training, their nutrition, just completely process driven. So, but also having the heaviest pack, you may just not even finish. You're going to get chafing. You're going to get like soreness. It's going to slow you down. It's going to bounce too much. So there's so much involved in that from a gear selection point of view. And you have to really like spreadsheets.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you film Grand to Grand when you did it?
So I wanted to. It was right as I was starting to film races. That was, so again, back in 2014. And I ended up filming, like I did some filming at Hard Rock when I paced in 2015. So I had, when I reached out to the organizers, Tess and Colin, who are great, and they said, no, our policy is no filming. And I was trying to kind of say, guys, like, this is a little different. Like, I like to think of myself more as like a PR partner for you. Like, I can help. And they said, no, unfortunately, we have a policy of no filming. So, and that was actually just as a sidebar, they were filming, but they had their own film crew. Who happened to be Derek Lytle and his team.
Yeah,
that's actually
our friend Derek films out there every year.
There you go. So Derek is, I remember meeting him and telling him, or at least thinking, like, I want to work with you one day. And finally, we started working together. I don't know if they regret that, not allowing me to film. But having said that, back then, the GoPro I would have used wouldn't have been very good. I think it was like a GoPro Hero 4, and it was garbage. I don't think the film would have been great. I then started filming with a GoPro Hero 6 in like 2018, and the quality finally was at a point where I feel like it's not about the gear. The crappy camera gear can hold you back. And now the GoPros are so good that's, I think, been part of my sort of success as well, is I'm able to use consumer level gear, but make it look really good because it can allow me to shoot in 10-bit S-Log and all these things. I can do color correction, and I can really like, if you really get to know the settings, like, you can really get a great image. And that just wasn't the case back then. So the short answer is no, I didn't film. And I don't think it would have made a great film anyway in hindsight.
Totally. All right. A couple more topics. I'm curious about how the Salomon relationship came about and how that kind of works.
I've been a Salomon ambassador actually for almost as long as I've been a trail runner, because I come from a marketing background, running a video marketing agency. And so when I first started trail running, within a year or two, I kind of started thinking, how can I get involved in the community, give back a little, but also kind of like have fun from a marketing perspective of, I'm into brand. And so I started talking to the team at Salomon, the store in Vancouver, which no longer exists. There used to be one in West Vancouver, and they were putting a little shop team together. And they said, oh, you seem like a nice guy. Like, do you want to, maybe you can help out and volunteer at events, and you get a gear budget, and, get to call yourself a Salomon athlete. And so I started doing that. I can't remember the year. I think it was 2015. 2014. It was 2014, I believe. So within a year or two of starting to trail run. And so I was a shop team member for the first, I can't remember how many years, quite a few. And then I started working more on like a provincial level, and eventually now with the national team. So initially I would have called myself an ambassador, a store level ambassador. And these are great programs for people who want to get involved with the community. You can lead group runs, you can, clinics, maybe, do presentations, whatever you want, however you want to get involved. Sometimes we are volunteering at races, and again, in exchange for some gear. But once I started working with on the national level, the relationship shifted a little bit to the point where I would argue now it's less of a athletic sponsorship and more that they are sponsoring my films. And now there's financial compensation as well. So it's more of when we talk at the beginning of the year, we're talking about the projects I have coming up and the resulting, I don't want to say deliverables, but what I'll be publishing as a result, and sort of how my audience is growing for my films. Unfortunately, though, it's still under the budget and under the program of athletic sponsorship. So I've been hitting a little bit of a glass ceiling there. Hopefully one day we'll work with the international team instead. I do have relationships there, but they're quite focused on podiums and athletic sponsorships as opposed to creators. So I think that where I'm at, where you kind of said it, like it's more about the adventure and the story than it is about the race results. it also puts me in a strange place when it comes to trying to find compensation, because that isn't a thing really. People who are
Totally.
winning their races, but not winning their races, but also being sponsored.
Yeah.
Typically you don't get sponsored for that.
Well, you're a good performer or borderline great performer at races, but I'm sure focusing on a film too kind of puts you in that maybe 90th percentile type of thing rather than 95th or 99th or
Oh yeah,
something.
totally. Yeah. And also it's like, and you can say it like I would say it like I wouldn't be sponsored or have an audience or if I wasn't making content. Like if people don't follow me because of my results, they follow me because of the stories I'm telling. But I think I am doing that with performances that I don't want to generalize, but tend to be better than most creators in the trail running space.
Big time.
Typically, you're seeing that more from the mid pack. And so I do like to think anyway that that's a value I can provide, where it's like, again, stage racing, I'll finish on the podium and I'll show you like, here's how to do this well. Like, I think I got good at stage racing as far as like the gear and the food. And so it's not like I'm learning as I go. It's like, it's almost like it's like, here's a story, but hopefully also a bit of a masterclass in like how, if you want to do this and do it well, which again is unique, but also makes it hard, I think, for brands to figure out how to work with me and where to fit me into their programs.
Totally. Yeah. I think because on the athlete side, so few athletes have a channel or really any long form content at all. We don't know any of the best athletes in the world.
Most athletes who do, and there's an increasing number, and I love to see this because the brands are paying to produce content on their behalf for their own channels. But they're not sitting there like I am spending 100 hours editing. Like, no, they're training. Like, they're athletes.
Yeah. All right. Last topic. If someone super interested, maybe talented videographer or outdoorsman or woman wants to create a channel, what is the advice? How would someone start out getting into that space?
I mean, I think if your goal is, first of all, I should say you should define what your goal is. So for me, it was initially creative output, creative expression, just having fun with it. And it's changed a little bit now over the years as I found an audience. But I think initially, like, what is your goal? If it requires building an audience, then I think the trick to building an audience now in such a noisy landscape of content is to niche down, really find a niche. I think there's a dearth of female creators right now. I think there's an opportunity for more female creators, especially when it comes to longer form content. But I think having a bit of a niche, and part of having a niche means having a perspective, having a point of view. So it doesn't mean like having a niche down into like a specific category, but even just like, how do you approach, like in my case, this idea of being a more adventure and travel based runner. I wouldn't say that's really a niche necessarily. It's more an approach to the sport.
Yeah, totally. All right. I lied. Last question. When's the Soft Rock film come out?
So Soft Rock, so we're recording this on November 21st. The film will hopefully be published on the 29th of November. So it should be out for December.
Cool.
And yeah, man, I'm super proud of this one. Like, collaborating with Derek was super fun. We had a really cool, like a fun team. 5 of us who went out and did it. And Audrey was supporting in the van. So my goal with this film is to get people stoked on the San Juans, because I've been stoked on it for my whole running career. We talk a lot about the race, about hard rock, but I want people to get excited about the fact that, like with the Tour de Mont Blanc, you don't have to race hard rock. You can go and enjoy the San Juans on your own time and see these epic views. Like, most people will not get into hard rock. We know that statistically. There's not enough spots and there's not enough years to do that for everybody to get into it. So this is the next best thing. And so part of this is like getting people stoked on the idea of like, there's more to trail running outside of these races. And while racing is cool and it gives you structure and it gives you a safe environment to explore the backcountry in, where you have trackers and aid stations, there's a lot more to the sport than that. So that's kind of what I'm hoping to inspire people to explore.
Yeah, I've had to explain what soft rock is to way more people than who know what hard rock is, or just that you can go out there and do basically the course without having to get into the race. It's kind of fascinating.
And you can do any course that way. I mean, this is the thing. It's
pretty much.
It amazes me how few people ever talk about doing that, or like, a lot of
You
people,
can run Western states.
you can run Western state. That's exactly it, right? So what is it now? I love racing too, and there's something that appeals about the race and the history and all that. But for some of these places, it's more about the place, and you can go to these places on your own, right? And that's, I think that's, if anything, that's what I'm trying to do with my content, is inspire people to like, not even necessarily travel, but it's like, look in your own backyard. There's probably some really epic races and routes. And if we're so focused on racing all the time, where it's like, no, I got to go and run like, mile repeats, and I got to do this, and I got to do that, and then I have a race coming up, I think we lose the best part of trail running, which is the adventure.
Totally. Yeah. People ran way before there were races. Well, thanks for joining us and being a part of this pretty epic month of Jeff.
Yeah. Well, looking forward to binging all the episodes.
Thanks again for joining.
Thanks.
Thank you guys for listening. As always, like, subscribe, 5 stars, 5-star review. If you write something out that's fun, we will read it. And we're just going to wrap this thing up because it's a busy week and I'm traveling a bunch. Thank you all for listening. Love you all. This podcast has done a lot for me. I think I'm going to get into that in one of the next couple episodes. But until then, stay elite, my friends.